If there is one thing I hate in this terrible, beautiful world, it is Star Wars fans.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!
And I'm ashamed to admit that I'm one of them. Nerd, 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 double dork, loser. Oh wait. Loser, ultra dork. God, I'm such a nerd. I really adore the original trilogy, warts and all. Films like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and Back to the Future are a big part of what I want to see out of cinema. Sure, films like, I don't know, 2001: A Space Odyssey and The Deer Hunter are excellent, well-made movies, but to me at least, they're not the kind of thing that I'd throw on a cold Sunday afternoon for a bit of fun, light-hearted entertainment. I guess everything has its place, and to me Star Wars is the embodiment of fun, simplistic creativity that people of all ages can enjoy. So why is it that I'm still getting death threats and hate comments because I liked The Force Awakens? A perfectly fun yet derivative movie. I was gonna throw my hat into the ravenous, never-ending black hole that is opinions on The Last Jedi long before this, but for too long I just felt too beat down and disappointed to say anything. But it's just been on my mind too much to not finally break my vow of silence. I think the reaction and response to The Last Jedi is quite frankly embarrassing, and there are a lot of people who should be ashamed for the things they've said because of a Star Wars movie. What kind of world are we living in where it's normal for people to send a director hate messages because they didn't like the movie they made? Grow up, you pathetic children. I just think it's kind of sad that such rampant negativity can be spawned from a franchise that is all about never allowing the darkness to win and holding on to hope at all costs.
I'll never join you!
I don't really care if you like or dislike The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. It's perfectly within your right to feel however you want. But do you not think that the backlash is kind of massively over-exaggerated and unnecessary? It comes across as if a large majority of people go into these movies with the sole intention of hating them. No matter how bad you think something is going to be, being so single-minded and belligerent, just for the sake of justifying your pre-made opinion, is kind of a pathetic and childish way to handle it. I think the response to The Last Jedi has kind of left fans in a weird place.
Yeah, I thought it sucked and I want everyone involved to die horribly.
Because it seems to me that the accepted opinion is now that this film is really bad and it ruined Star Wars for some reason. Even though Star Wars was already ruined 3 times prior. I think discussing movies is a lot of fun. Casual debates help challenge your viewpoint and only benefit the overall landscape. But a lot of the discussions around this movie are just straight up malicious and overly simplified. You have 2 choices. You can either really love it or think it's the worst film ever made. And there are people who exist out there who actually use "he likes The Force Awakens" as an insult and do not like me as a person because of it, as if that's a character flaw. You know what, to those people I say, suck on these nuts. I've seen The Last Jedi 3 times at the cinema now, and I never see anything that many times because I kind of hate going to the cinema. Collectively, I've seen the film with 4 different people. All of them are different levels of Star Wars fan, and all of them enjoyed it. 2 of these 4 people never go on Twitter or Reddit, so I found their reaction to be genuinely interesting, because they are out of the internet hate echo chamber. I'm gonna stop avoiding talking about my actual thoughts on the movie now. Get ready for this. Half of you are gonna love me, half of you are gonna want to kill me. The first viewing I was genuinely unsure on my feelings, but had an overall positive outlook and vibe. There were plenty of things I didn't like, but there were also plenty of things I did like. The second viewing I had a much better time. It's widely accepted that the film is a lot better the second time. Some of the pacing issues seemed less severe than I originally thought, and I enjoyed the ride significantly more. I think originally I was nervous that they were just going to remake Empire and present nothing new or interesting, but at the very least you have to admit this is something new for the franchise. No one saw this story coming. The third time I just had a good experience and was never bored. My opinions were clear and unchanged. Depending on who you are, you're going to approach The Last Jedi from one or more of many perspectives. And from one of those perspectives, The Last Jedi are evil. These include people who are a Star Wars fan, a fan of movies in general, or just someone who is indifferent and wants to know what all the fuss is about. I'd like to think people who genuinely hate Star Wars wouldn't waste their time going to see it, but I'm sure there are a few of them who like wasting their money, just so they feel like they have a right to complain about it. I of course fall in line with being a fan of movies first, and a fan of Star Wars secondly. I think this perspective is important because I feel like I, and many others, are looking at this movie in a totally different lens to a lot of other people. Mostly the self-proclaimed true Star Wars fans.
If you are a true Star Wars fan, you'd hate what this movie did.
I see so many comments exclaim, I guess it is true that no one quite hates Star Wars as much as Star Wars fans.
It's only a movie. And if you think you're going to go into the movie and recapture your childhood, you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
The Last Jedi is a film I would personally find quite difficult to hate, or at the very least ever call a badly made movie. I've seen many people say something along the lines of, it's a well-made movie, it's just a bad Star Wars movie, which you can't really argue with. I'm not here to stop you thinking it's a bad Star Wars movie relative to the others, but what is really bothering me about this entire conversation is that a lot of criticisms for this movie are not actually criticisms at all. I genuinely saw a comment whinging about The Last Jedi being a bad movie simply because they didn't use the Wilhelm scream sound effect. Yeah, that really makes the film bad, doesn't it? Or that gravity wouldn't work the way it is depicted in the film in real life. I'm sorry, but if it genuinely annoys you that the scientific rules of space don't apply to a Star Wars movie, then that's kind of on you. Have you been paying attention to this franchise at all? None of it makes any sense, and that's entirely by design.
Huh? Disappointed by lack of science, Star Wars.
You know, it might even be YouTube channels like mine, or more likely channels like CinemaSins, that have created this new standard and expectation for what film criticism actually is. Nitpicking a film to the point where you're purposefully ignoring the context and intent isn't helpful to anyone. Yeah, it may be funny, but that doesn't mean it's helpful criticism. And over the past year, I've become increasingly more aware of this. I'm trying to make it more clear that what I say is just my opinion, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's the correct opinion. And I feel bad for any video where I've ignored this for the sake of an easy jab at a movie, or whatever. And no, I'm not gonna hide behind the, it's just satire, stop taking it so seriously argument. I find that to be a pretty cop-out response to when something is very unclear as to if the intent was comedic or constructive or not. So whatever, I liked The Last Jedi. Get over it. But what do I like about it? Well, let me tell you. The film is visually stunning and creative, the production levels are off the charts, the cinematography is fantastic all round, the performances are brilliant and convincing, Kylo Ren is probably the most interesting character in this entire franchise now, also goddamn is he a thick boy. The action is thrilling, the camera work is flowing and well thought out alongside some very clever editing at times, the score by John Williams is so perfect, there's a track towards the end of the movie called The Battle of Crate that juggles so many themes at once that I was wowed by that alone. I don't usually like praising special effects too much because bombastic computer-generated imagery just isn't that impressive to me anymore, but the effects work for the most part, bar two shots which I think are really dreadful in the casino, are very tastefully achieved and obviously had a lot of care and thought put into them, with a lot of good use of practical puppets and animatronics alongside some great set design. I enjoyed the themes of learning through failure, even if some characters are thrown to the side for the sake of reinforcing that point. I think it's a message that even a lot of adults can learn from. But overall, there's a lot more to chew on compared to the previous Star Wars movies in that respect. I think the way the film culminates with the three different plot lines all coming together at once is extremely well executed and genuinely thrilling and exciting, even if what it took to get there had some bumpy moments. I really enjoyed not having any clue what was going to happen. Personally, I thought Luke's arc was very satisfying. I didn't have a problem with the way the Force was used, like a lot of fans do. To me, it is a logical extension and fits in line with the original trilogy, while adding something new and genuinely interesting to the way it can work.
But the Force has been ruined! How is it able to do all these new things that were never explained before?
Well, apart from the very obvious setup and foreshadowing that's all over the film, since when has Star Wars ever established a Force power before just doing it? Yeah, I totally remember the exposition from Obi-Wan explaining how the mind trick works. Oh wait, no I don't. Yeah, remember that scene where they explain that Obi-Wan can just appear as a ghost for no reason? Oh wait, no, that doesn't happen. I find it insulting that they didn't explain how Luke somehow pulls his lightsaber out of the snow in the Wampa Cave. What an insult to the original movie. And don't even get me started on how Luke and Leia can all of a sudden read each other's minds. Bad writing alert! Bad writing! Hacks! No, just shut up! Personally, I cannot stand the way the Force is used in the prequels. It's too much like a video game for me, and contradicts pretty much everything from the original story. I know some people wanted to see Luke fly around an X-Wing and kill stormtroopers with a lightsaber, but to me that sounds like possibly the worst thing ever. To what purpose or end does that serve? It sounds way too similar to what we got with Yoda in the prequels. which is embarrassing and completely ruins his character for me. We already have 3 movies where Luke does everything that everyone wants to see. I don't understand what would be interesting about seeing an old Luke doing all the things he's already done again. Surely that would be meaningless fan service. I also hate how people constantly bring up the quote from Mark Hamill saying that he originally fundamentally disagreed with the script, but then everyone conveniently misses out the part where he says in the end he was really proud of what the team did for the movie and that he was wrong. Also, actors are not writers or directors necessarily. Creative conflict between actors and directors is incredibly common, but your job as an actor is to fulfill the director's vision, not the other way around. And one thing you cannot disagree with is that this is the director's vision. I think the fact that Disney was willing to hand their biggest franchise over to one guy who has never directed anything close to this scale before is commendable, let alone giving him the sole reins as writer too. If nothing else, I'm enjoying seeing all these different directors' interpretations of Star Wars. The Force Awakens is a very J.J. Abrams movie. Rogue One is a very Gareth Edwards movie, and The Last Jedi is a very Rian Johnson movie. Honestly, I think a lot of the blame for some of the fans' problems with the story should be more on the shoulders of J.J. Abrams. He's so obsessed with this mystery box idea.
Well, what are stories but mystery boxes? The withholding of information, doing that intentionally is much more engaging, whether it's like
Snoke, Rey's parents.
The mystery box meaning what you think you're getting than what you're really getting.
And it's since been revealed that he had no plan for what the reveals were even going to be from the get-go. So given that information, I completely understand the route Johnson decided to take with certain characters' secrets and non-existent backstories. None of this is to say I think the film is perfect either. There's a side plot in like a casino, which most people agree is a bit clumsy and takes up far too much time in an already long movie, especially considering what it ultimately leads to. I think it is a bit exaggerated as to how bad that sequence is, because it really isn't that bad, and is actually quite a short segment of the movie comparatively to the rest of it. There is some dreadfully cheesy and awkward dialogue at points, but Star Wars has always had that, so that's not really a deal breaker for me.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
You can't win, Darth.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Laugh it up, fuzzball.
Scruffy-looking nerf herder.
I don't know where you get your delusions, laser brain.
No, it's because I'm so in love with you.
So love has blinded you. I'll try spinning. That's a good trick.
Like, I find it pretty ironic if you love the prequels, but you're calling out this movie for having bad dialogue. I find the somewhat ham-fisted anti-1% message kind of funny and ironic, given the context of what Star Wars represents. And yeah, treating animals nicely is important and everything, but was it really necessary alongside everything else this film was trying to achieve? No, not really, other than to serve those character arcs. Some of the humour is a little too distracting for my liking and does undercut some dramatic moments, but that's not to say none of it works. In fact, this film probably has one of the funniest visual gags from any Star Wars movie, involving some very evil ironing. Also, side note, I don't think comparing the Porgs to Minions is fair in terms of how they actually affect the movie. The Minions are actually integral to the plot of all 3 Despicable Me movies. The Porgs really don't affect anything, they're just birds. If anything, Ewoks are far more comparable to Minions because they have a direct impact on the plot of the movie, as well as being designed to sell toys. Laura Dern's character is a bit of a mess, but just subbing in Admiral Akbar would not have solved anything, other than being fan service, because we ultimately know less about him from the movies than we do Laura Dern's character. Ideally, she would have had some development in a previous movie or something. And while I kind of understand what she did, because Poe Dameron did ruin everything, it was a little unnecessary and stupid and only existed to serve the plot, but again, Star Wars has always been filled with conveniences and plot contrivances, so it really doesn't bother me that much. I don't know what to tell you. So out of everything I've just said, does that really sound like a dreadful movie a lot of people are selling it as? Personally, I think there are a lot more positives than negatives. I believe a lot of people are being blinded by the negativity bias, and are simply refusing to accept the film for what it is. The negativity bias states that even when they are of equal intensity, negative emotions have a greater impact on us than positive ones. Think of it this way. When you're at a restaurant and you have a really bad meal that sucks, that ends up with you having to complain, that sticks with you a lot more over the tens or even hundreds of meals you've had at other places that were good and all went well. So in other words, so what if you didn't like that scene with Leia in space? What about the amazing way Luke and Kylo explain the same event from different perspectives? Or the brilliant sequence on Crate? Or the throne room encounter with Kylo and Rey? Or the intense action sequence at the start of the movie? Or the final scene with Luke and Leia? Or the way the music builds and swells around every scene? Or how creative and thoughtful some of the exposition from Luke is? My point is, I think there's so much more to love than there is to hate, which I know might sound ironic coming from me, but it's what I think. Before writing this this, I went back and watched The Empire Strikes Back, just to try to imagine how people on the internet would react to that movie if it was released today. And I genuinely think it would have gotten equal, if not worse, reaction to The Last Jedi. So many people have a problem with the characters failing over and over again in The Last Jedi, even though that's the very blatant and obvious point of the movie. But somehow forget the fact that in Empire, basically nothing is accomplished at all in terms of the greater story. Sure, characters grow and learn, and that's the point of that movie, but it doesn't have an ending. It's completely reliant on the sequel to finish the story. That's the same thing we complain about nowadays in video games, for God's sake. And I really adore Empire, and I'm just saying. Imagine if for some reason Empire had flopped when it originally came out, so it never got a sequel. So much would be left untouched, and it would make the series feel utterly incomplete. It's kind of if The Last Jedi just ended before the crate battle. Just imagine how much more angry people would be if the conclusion was left on a cliffhanger like in Empire. This angry vocal minority of so-called fans has buried any real criticism of the film, and has sent the message that it ruined Star Wars, and that it's a dreadful piece of filmmaking when it really isn't. Just like how the meme for The Force Awakens is that it's identical to A New Hope, and there's no more nuance or room for discussion beyond that. It's reductive, and I really hope it doesn't send the wrong message to Disney that they should take away the freedom from the directors and writers, and turn it all into a focus-tested Jedi Council of money-hungry fat cats who have no passion for Star Wars at all. I thought fans were supposed to see the good, not pass off nitpicks and complaints as a reason to hate a new movie in their beloved series. Mistaking creative disagreements with the story as actual criticism and giving off this message that the film is prequel level abysmal is undercutting all the hard work and quality filmmaking that is on show in The Last Jedi, which I think is sad. You can pick apart every single one of the Star Wars movies in the exact same way that people on the internet are doing now to The Last Jedi. Why let yourself get bogged down in the minutiae when this movie is so much better than pretty much every other big budget Hollywood snooze fest that is being released at the same time? Yeah man, The Last Jedi is the worst movie ever made. Forget about the prequels, which have aged horribly by the way. Yeah, I prefer The Mummy 2017. Yeah, Justice League was so much better. To me, Alien Covenant was much more true to the original, unlike The Last Jedi. It was just much more epica overall. Oh, and don't forget about that Pirates of the Caribbean movie that I can't even remember the name of. What a blast that was. That was true to the original too. Yeah, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword was so much better than The Last Jedi. Just so much better. Especially how true it was to the story of King Arthur. Oh man, I just wish that The Last Jedi was as truly epic and awesome as Fast and the Furious 8. The true 8th movie in a franchise that is epic. Those guys over at Disney need to take notes from the real filmmakers. Am I right? I'd like to thank The Right Opinion for helping to proofread and edit my script for this video, because he's a bit better at English than me, and some of my sentence structure is kind of strange sometimes, and he helped me out. So check out his channel in the description. He's a pretty underrated YouTuber. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it didn't make you too angry. Make sure you tell me your thoughts on The Last Jedi in the comments, which I'm sure you're going to do anyway. And my inbox is open and ready for all the death threats. Alright, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!